Welcome back. The last chapter we're covering for this semester is Physiology and Histology of the Skin, which is chapter 3 in the standard aesthetics book. The learning objectives for this chapter is to describe why learning the physiology and histology of the skin makes you a better esthetician, describe the attributes of healthy skin, distinguish the 6 primary functions of the skin, explain the function of each layer of the skin from the deepest to the surface, and identify a hair follicle as an appendage of the skin. We'll also learn to identify nails as an appendage of the skin, describe the functions of the 2 types of nerves, explain what is produced by the 2 types of glands in the skin, and distinguish the factors influencing skin health. Skin histology and physiology is the foundational sciences that we need to know, and they involve the study of the anatomy, the layers, and the functions of the skin. Histology is the actual study of the structure and composition of the skin tissue. So histology is very much like anatomy, where it's the study of the structure of the organ. Physiology is the study of the functions of a living organism or organisms. So the way I remember that physiology is the functions is that physiology has that f sound, so physiology goes with functions. An esthetician, so what we are going to be or what we are, is a specialist in the cleansing, beautification, and preservation of the health of the skin on the entire body, including the face and neck. We as estheticians really should commit to being lifelong learners, so taking classes, learning about new research and changes and different technologies. It's going to be very beneficial for our clients and ourselves because clients are also going to value our comprehensive understanding of the skin, and making personalized treatments and recommendations or to prescribe home care routines is going to be very helpful long-term for that client or for even us. Why we should have a study and thorough understanding of physiology and histology of the skin is because the layers, the components, and the functions of the skin all work with other body systems to protect and regulate the skin and other parts of the body and the overall health of us as people. The study of skin physiology and histology includes the learning about the aging process, as well as interpreting the effects of ultraviolet damage, hormonal influences, and nutrition on skin health. And each of these factors are going to affect the skin's health and appearance. So knowing what's causing what will ultimately determine what we prescribe, not really prescribe our clients, but recommend our clients to use. There is a lot to study about the skin and how to best maintain its optimum health. And with a deeper understanding, us as skin therapists or as estheticians can treat the system in a healthy way. Some fun skin facts if you're interested. The thinnest skin is found on your eyelids, which is 1/16 inches or 1.5 millimeters thick. Skin averages of an area about 22 square feet or 2 square meters or 3,000 square inches. The skin accounts for about 15% of your body weight. The skin has 3 layers: the epidermis, which is waterproof, the dermis, which contains our hair and sweat glands, and the subcutaneous, which is the fat and large blood vessels. Skin is the thickest on our palms of the hands and also the soles of our feet. The skin of an average adult weighs 6 to 9 pounds, depending on the source of the research. Everyone has the same number of melanocytes. It's the cells that produce the skin color. So some people's cells just produce more melanin than others, so they would be darker complected. Every inch of your skin has a unique stretchiness and strength factor based on the location, so the skin on your knuckles is very different than the skin on your belly. Every minute, your body sheds 30,000 dead skin cells. The epidermis is much thinner than the dermis, so the outer layer of skin is much thinner than the true skin, that dermis layer, and scar tissue lacks hair and sweat glands. The skin, which is in the integumentary system, is the largest organ in the body, and it serves as a barrier to the outside element. So the skin layers, nerves, cellular functions, hair follicles, and glands all are working together harmoniously to regulate and protect the body. There's hormones, growth factors, and other biochemicals that control the skin's intricate functions as well. The basic material and building blocks for our body's tissues are proteins. So there are amino acids, which are forming peptides, and those peptides are what's forming proteins. So the reason why peptides are so important for the skin and ingredients is that they help what builds our skin. So that power peptide is very healing to the skin because that's what the skin is kind of made of. And proteins have many roles in maintaining the skin health. The skin has miles of blood vessels, millions of sweat glands, and an array of nerves within a network of fibers. So the appendages of the skin is going to include the hair, the nails, the sweat glands, and the oil glands. Healthy skin is going to be slightly moist, soft, and smooth, and somewhat acidic. The skin is similar to a multifunction tool because all of the functions that it performs. So we have a sensation through the skin, protection, heat regulation, excretion, secretion, and absorption, all done through the skin. So it's very multifunctional. With sensation, it is what we feel. So sensation is done through nerve fibers, which nerve fibers are in the skin that sense when we are touched. And depending on the type of stimulations, sensations can cause us to feel, react, or move. Different nerve sensors also help us detect different sensation and perceive different changes in our environment. So heat, cold, touch, pain, or just pressure. Nerve sensors are sending messages to the brain, while motor nerves are sending messages back to relay to the body on how to respond. So the way to look at this is that the sensation nerves, so the things that you're feeling, say you hit something or you touch something hot, nerve sensors are receiving that message and sending it straight to the brain so the brain can determine what to do. That message from the brain is being sent through a motor nerve to your hand to take off your hand and react, if that makes sense. Sensory nerves are most abundant in the fingertips, and they are designed to be one of the most sensitive parts of the body. So the fingertips are super, super sensitive compared to the rest of us. The skin also aids in protection. So the skin protects us from injury and invasion using many defense mechanisms, one of which is the acid mantle. The acid mantle is something that we are trying to, as estheticians, improve on or protect as well when we do treatments. So the acid mantle is a protective barrier made up of sebum, lipids, sweat, and water, and it forms a hydrolipic film, which serves as an oil-water balance on the skin surface and protects the skin from drying out and exposure to damaging external factors. The acid mantle has an average pH of 5.5, which makes sense because that would be more slightly acidic. That's why it's called the acid mantle. So having that balanced pH of 5.5 is important to protect our body from pathogens and to regulate enzymatic functions. It's also part of our skin's natural barrier function, which is the skin's mechanism that protects from irritation and intercellular transepidermal water loss, which is the TEWL, and the lipids or protective oils that are a part of the intercellular matrix, which is a fluid between the epidermal cells, contributes to protect the barrier functions. So damage to that barrier layer is the cause of many skin problems. Melanocytes are the cells that produce pigment and protect our bodies from the harmful ionizing UV rays. The melanocytes are producing a pigment granule that is called melanosomes, which then produce a protein called melanin. And that melanin is traveling from the deeper basal layer of the cell, which is the lower layer of the epidermis, of the stratum germativum, which is the next layer, to the surface, so the top layer of the skin, through different finger-like projections called dendrites. And what they're doing is shielding the skin from negative effects of the sun and indoor tanning. UV rays themselves cause damage on the DNA in the melanocytes and can cause skin cancer. The skin can repair itself when injured, which is protecting the body from infection and damage from injury. It can also restore itself to a normal thickness through hyperproduction of cells and blood clotting. Hormones like epidermal growth factor, or EGF, stimulate the skin cells to reproduce and heal, and proteins like peptides trigger fibroblasts, or cell stimulators, and cells to rejuvenate. So when I say the proteins, or like the peptides, cause the skin to heal, that's what I'm talking about. The skin also helps regulate our heat. So with heat regulation, that is protecting the body from the environment. So while our average body temperature is around 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, when the outside temperature changes, our skin is adjusting to that warm or that cold, and controlling the body is necessary. So the body maintains the thermoregulation through evaporation, perspiration, radiation, and insulation. So when it comes to protection from heat, so if it's very hot outside, we are going to sweat. So our sweat glands are releasing heat through our perspiration, which is our sweat, which cools our cells through evaporation on the skin surface. And blood flow and blood vessel dilation also assists in cooling the body. So our blood flow, our blood vessels are going towards the skin to make them closer to the outside to cool off a little bit more. And that's why when someone gets hot, they turn a little bit more red, and that's because the blood vessels are closer to the skin, so they look a little bit more pink or red. With protection from the cold, this is accomplished by constriction of blood vessels and decreased blood flow. That's why when people are very cold, the first things that are being constricted, the first areas of constriction, are going to be like the outer limbs, so the fingertips or the outer extremities. So fingertips and toes, they may turn a little bit blue. That's because blood flow is going towards the heart, towards the organs where we need heat, or where we need to keep the heat the most when it's very cold outside. Also, when it's cold, the erector pili muscles that are attached to our hair follicle contract and cause goosebumps. This reaction warms the skin by the air pockets that are created under the hairs that stand up. And also, our fat layers and our subcutaneous layer of the skin help insulate and warm our body. And shivering is also an automatic response that warms the body. Our skin also helps us excrete and secrete. So with excretion, that is getting rid of, or something is exiting our body. And that's done through the sudoriferous glands, which are the sweat glands. And they are excreting perspiration or sweat and prevent the body from overheating. Heavy sweating can cause loss of fluids, dehydration, and also the loss of mineral balance that it's needed to keep the body from functioning optimally. Secretion is something being made. So for example, hormones are secreted because they are being made in different organs. So our skin secretes from the sebaceous glands, which the sebaceous glands are also known as the oil glands, and they are appendages attached to the follicles that produce sebum. Sebum is our oil, so it's an oily substance that protects the surface of the skin and lubricates the skin and the hair. These oils are what is keeping our skin soft and protected from the outside elements. And it's also why people that have very oily skin, as they age, they still kind of contain like a youthfulness to them. They don't age as quickly because they're not getting as dried out. The sebum is slowing evaporation of water, or the transepidermal water loss, and helps maintain appropriate levels of water in the cells. Emotional stress and hormone imbalances can stimulate oil glands. They can increase the flow of sebum, which can cause skin problems or acne. Our skin also absorbs, so there's an absorption of chemicals, hormones, moisture, and oxygen, which is necessary for the skin's health. It also absorbs vitamin D, which is more synthesized and produced in the skin upon absorbing exposure of the sun. The skin selectively absorbs topical products, serums, and creams through the cells, hair follicles, and sebaceous glands. The penetration of product or ingredients is determined by the size of the molecule and other characteristics of the product, which is why chemical formulation is very important. You can't just mix up something at home and call it something. It has to go through a lot of lab testing to make sure that it's actually doing what it's supposed to do and absorbing into the skin. Lipid soluble products penetrate better, so ones that contain fat or oil penetrate a little bit better. And the routes of penetration are through the follicle walls, sebaceous glands, intercellular or transcellular. Absorption of select topical products helps keep our skin moisturized, nourished, and protected. And scientific advances continually result in the creation of new products with new ingredients that are more readily absorbed into the skin, which makes them more effective. Question number 1 is, what are the 6 main functions of the skin? Question number 2 is, what is the skin's protective barrier function? Going on to the layers of the skin, we have the subcutaneous layer, we have the dermis layer, and we have the epidermis. The subcutaneous layer is also known as the hypodermis because it sits below the dermis, or the superficial fascia. It's composed of loose connective tissue or subcutaneous tissue, which is also known as adipose tissue or fat. This layer is about 80% fat. It helps create a protective cushion that gives us contour and smoothness to the body. It also is a source of energy for the body. The subcutaneous layer, or the hypodermis, contains vessels, nerves, fibers, adipose cells, fibroblasts, and some components of the hypodermis. This layer decreases and thins as we age, and a thick subcutaneous layer can indicate a hormonal disorder that should get further explored when performing skincare, when you perform a skincare consultation. The dermis, which can be called the derma, the corium, the cutis, or the true skin, is the supportive layer of connective tissue above the hypodermis, which is that subcutaneous layer. The dermis supplies our skin with oxygen and nutrients through the network of blood vessels and the lymphatic channels. It's about 25 times thicker than the epidermis, which is our outermost layer of the cell, or outermost layer of the skin, and it consists of 2 layers. It has the reticular layer, which is below, and the papillary layer, which is above. The dermis is primarily composed of connective tissues made of collagen protein and elastin fibers. Collagen is a protein substance of complex fibers that give the strength to the skin, and it's necessary for wound healing. Elastin is the fibrous protein that forms elastic tissue and gives skin its elasticity. So collagen and elastin are both proteins basically, but collagen is what's giving the skin the strength, and then elastin is what's giving us the elasticity. So going into more depth of the layers of the dermis, the reticular layer is denser and the deeper layer of the dermis. It's comprised mainly of collagen and elastin. Damage done to this layer is primarily causing sagging, wrinkles, stretch mark, and extrinsic aging. So loss of elasticity in the skin, and collagen and elastin are going to be broken down by UV rays and UV damage, smoking, and other environmental influences. The papillary layer, which is above the reticular layer, is basically just connecting that dermis layer to the epidermis. Dermal papillae are membranes of ridges and grooves that attach to the epidermis, and attached to that dermal papillae are looped capillaries that nourish the epidermis, or tactile corpuscles, which are the nerve endings sensitive to touch and pressure. The hair papillae are small cone-shaped structures at the bottom of the hair follicles, and blood supplies the nourishment within the skin through the capillaries. The papillary layer composes 10 to 20% of the dermis. Glycosaminoglycans are large protein molecules, and water-binding substances that are found between the fibers of the dermis. And they're polysaccharides that maintain and support the collagen and elastin in our cellular spaces in the skin. Hyaluronic acid is a hydrating fluid essential to keep our glycoaminoglycans functioning, or our GAGs. So glycoaminoglycans is GAGs. Other components that are located in the dermis is blood and lymph vessels, capillaries, follicles, sebaceous glands, sudoriferous glands, sensory nerves, additional receptors, the erector pili muscles, fibroblast cells, lymphocytes, Langerhans cells, mast cells, and leukocytes, which are white blood cells. And there's a fluid in the dermis called extracellular matrix, or ECM, and this is composed of collagen and other proteins and the GAGs. And they maintain balance, provide dermal support, and assist in metabolism, growth, and migration. The dermal or epidermal junction, which is DEG, connects the dermis to the epidermis. It consists of the layers of connective collagen tissue with many small pockets and holes. There are collagen fibrils from the dermis that are embedded in these layers to provide strength and adhesion. And there's also keratin filaments of the epidermis side that ensure strength and adhesion. And some states define the esthetician scope of practice as not beyond the DEG, which is that dermal epidermal junction. That would be the case for us. We cannot go below the epidermis, so we can't go not beyond the dermal epidermal junction. The epidermis, which is the part of the skin we can treat, is the outermost layer of the skin. This is the epithelial tissue that covers our entire body. It is a thin protective covering with many nerve endings. The epidermis is composed of 5 layers called the strata, or the stratum, which is singular. So we have the stratum germativum, the stratum spinosum, the stratum granulosum, the stratum lucidium, and the stratum corneum. Understanding how the skin cell layers function is important in choosing ingredients and treatments. The esthetician's scope of practice references working on the epidermis, not the dermis, unless they're working under the direction of a physician or other licensed medical practitioner. Keratinocytes are cells that are composed of keratin, and they comprise 95% of the epidermis. Keratinocytes contain both proteins and lipids, and they're surrounded by lipids, which protect them from water loss and dehydration. They have many functions and go through different changes as they move up through the layers to the top layer where they are protecting the epidermis. Keratin is a fiber protein that provides resilience and protection, and it's found in all of the layers of the epidermis. Hard keratin is found in the nails and the hair. Stratum germinativum is the germination or growth layer. So this is the bottom layer of the epidermis, or the basal cell layer. It's located right above the dermis, and it's composed of a single layer of basal cells, which lays on the basement membrane. So the basal or the germinativum layer is the same layer. So you might see either or. This is the active layer where stem cells undergo continuous mitosis, which is replenishing skin cells that are shed from the surface. The stem cells are mother cells that divide to form 2 daughter cells, and some stem cells and daughter cells remain undifferentiated and keep dividing for consistent self-renewal, and they either remain stem cells or become something else, like a keratinocyte. And in the body, some daughter cells go on to become skin cells, glands, follicles, tissues, or organs, and daughter cells are not able to divide anymore or have the capability to program themselves to end up as one specific type of cell, and this is known as terminal differentiation. Oh my god. The cells in the basal layer, or the germinativum layer, produce the necessary lipids that form the cell membranes and hold the cells together. There is something called Merkel cells, which are sensory cells that are the touch receptors, and they're also located in the basal layer. The stratum germinativum also contains our melanocytes, and these are the cells that produce the pigment granules in the basal layer. Those granules are called melanosomes, which can produce the complex protein melanin, which determines the skin color, the eye color, and the hair color. So as a recap, melanocytes produce melanosomes, which produce melanin. The next layer of the skin, going more outwards, is the stratum spineosum, and this is the spiny cells, or the spiny layer of the skin, and it's above the germinativum layer, and it's the largest layer of the epidermis. Cells continue up this layer and divide to change shape, and enzymes are creating lipids and proteins. Cells' appendages resemble prickly spines. They become desmosomes, which are keratin filaments that assist in holding cells together. They strengthen the epidermis and assist in intercellular communication. Other cells that are found in the stratum spineosum are Langerhans immune cells, which protect our body from infections by identifying and destroying foreign materials, which are antigens, and they're also found here. The keratinocytes and melanocytes also work together to form an even placement of pigment granules. There's also lamellar granules that contain lipids to maintain the barrier function of the skin. The next layer of the skin, or of the epidermis going outwards, is the stratum granulosum, and this is the grainy cells, or the granule layer of the skin, and it's composed of cells that resemble granules, and they're filled with keratin. The production of keratin and intercellular lipids also takes place in the stratum granulosum, and enzymes are dissolving the desmosomes here, which are holding the cells together. And as these cells become keratinized, they move to the surface and replace cells that are shed from the stratum corneum. There's natural moisturizing substances and intercellular lipids that are made here and are excreted from the cells to form components of the skin's barrier function of the top layer of skin. And these compounds that are being made are referred to as natural moisturizing factors, or NMFs, and they hydrate the lipid layer of the surrounding cells, absorb water, and prevent water loss. The stratum lucidum is the clear cells. So the lucidum is a clear, thin layer of dead skin cells under the stratum corneum, and this is a translucent layer that's made of small cells that let light pass through. This layer is the thickest on the palms of our hands and the soles of our feet, where epidermal cells, or epidermal ridges, provide a better grip, and keratinocytes contain a clear keratin in this layer. Cells here release lipids, which form bilayers of oil and water. The layer also forms our unique fingerprints and footprints in this layer. The stratum corneum contains horny cells, so it's known as the horny layer, and this is the top outermost layer of the epidermis. The esthetician works primarily with this layer, as it's very thin, waterproof, and permeable, which means things can go in and out. It regenerates itself, detoxifies the body, and responds to stimulus. Keratinocytes on the surface have hardened into corneocytes, which are the waterproof protective cells. The corneocytes have dried out and they lack nuclei, and the layer is named the corneum because of these scale-like cells. And keratinocytes are continually shed from the skin in a process called desquamation. So when we're exfoliating, we're kind of helping the process of desquamation, or the shedding of the skin cells. The cells are then replaced by new cells coming from the lower strata, and the process of desquamation and replacement is what's known as cell turnover. Cell turnover rate slows as we age, and understanding the process helps us make better decisions about how we treat aging skin. Average adult cell turnover rate is every 28 days, and depending on age, lifestyle, and health, and by the time we are over 50, it slows to about 42 to 84 days, which is why we can typically exfoliate a little bit more as we age. Cells and oil combine to form a protective barrier layer on the stratum corneum, and the keratinocytes are secreting the lamellar granules, which results in the formation of the impermeable lipid-containing membrane that serves as the water barrier, and then together this is what is making up the acid mantle. The stratum corneum cells are surrounded by bilayers of oil and water, and a bilayer is a thin polar membrane that's made up of 2 layers of lipid molecules. In general, the stratum corneum has 15 to 20 layers of cells, and the keratinocytes on the surface of the skin are also called squamous, which means flat and scaly, and keratinized cells that are both flat and hardum, which is the flat, squamous, and hardened cornified. Melanin is the pigment that protects us from the sun. Every person has the same number of melanocytes, which are the pigment-producing cells, and both internal and external factors affect the melanin activation and production. Differences in genetic skin color are due to the amount of melanin activated in the skin and the way it's distributed. Melanin production is stimulated by exposure to sunlight and protects the cells below by absorbing and blocking UV radiation. So melanocyte cells make the melanosome spheres, which then are transferred to keratinocytes, and the pigment darkening occurs when the melanocytes deposit melanosomes into the keratinocytes through dendrites. The body produces 2 types of melanin. There is pheomelanin, which is more red and yellow in color, and there's eumelanin, which is dark brown to black. And people with light-colored skin may mostly produce pheomelanin, while those that are darker complected may produce more eumelanin. Products that suppress the melanin production by interrupting the biochemical process are referred to as brightening agents. Some are also called tyronase inhibitors, which the tyronase is the enzyme that stimulates the melanocytes and thus produces more melanin. And they are designed to reduce hyperpigmentation. So if you have hyperpigmentation or you have a client that has hyperpigmentation, you would recommend ingredients that suppress the melanin production. Question number 3 is to name the 5 layers of the epidermis in order from the deepest to the most superficial. Next, we're going to discuss about the hair follicle as an appendage of the skin. So hair is an appendage of the skin. It's slender. There's a thread-like outgrowth from the skin and the scalp, and we need to understand this appendage in order to better perform treatments like brow waxing, brow shaping, body waxing, sugaring, etc., etc. There's a heavier concentration of hair on our head, our underarms, around our genitals, and then on the arms and legs. So a lot of the times that's what people are going to be wanting to get waxed. There is hormone influences that affect the male and female growth patterns of hair. And there's also genetic influences that affect the distribution, the thickness, the quality, the color, the rate of growth, and whether the hair is going to be straight or curly. There are also 2 types of keratin. We have alpha A keratin, which is softer, and we have beta or B keratin, which is harder. And that keratin is going to form continuous sheets like our fingernails or our long, endless fibers of hair. And hair contains 90% of hard B keratin and also melanin, which is what determines our hair color. There are abnormalities that can contribute to ingrown hairs and folliculitis, which is an inflammation of the follicle. So to help prevent that, we have to instruct our clients to exfoliate regularly, like I would say every 2 days on the area waxed, but also moisturizing is extremely important. I know from experience, I'm really great at exfoliating, but sometimes on the waxed area, I'm not great at moisturizing it, and I still get some ingrowns from not doing that properly. Next, we'll discuss how nails are an appendage of the skin. They are hard, translucent plates that protect our fingers and our toes. Onyx is the technical term for the nail, and it's composed of hard keratin. The nail plate contains no nerves or blood vessels, and it grows about 1/10 to 1/8 of an inch per month. In the state of Illinois, we can't do nail treatments or nail services because you would have to be a licensed nail tech for that or a licensed cosmetologist. But there are states where you can perform nail services as an esthetician. But there are some symptoms of diseases and disorders that can influence the skin that are evident on the nails. So that's something that we could look out for. Getting into types of nerves. Nerves are cord-like bundles of fibers that are made up of neurons, which are sensory stimuli and motor impulses that pass between the brain and other parts of our central nervous system, and the eyes, the glands, muscles, and other parts of the body. And there are two types of nerves that we have to remember. Motor nerves, or efferent nerves, they also are known by, are nerve fibers that convey impulses from the brain or spinal cord to the rest of the body, so muscles or glands even, and they are what stimulate our muscles. There's a type of motor nerve called the secretory nerves, and they're motor nerves that are attached to sweat and oil glands, and they are regulating excretion from the sweat glands, and they control the sebum output to the surface of the skin. There's also sensory nerves or afferent nerves, and these are nerve fibers that send messages to the central nervous system in the brain to react to heat, cold, pain, pressure, and touch. In the dermis of our skin, we have two types of duct glands, which produce different substances. We have the sebaceous glands, or the oil glands. They are connected to the hair follicles and produce oil or sebum, which protects the skin's surface. And there's glandular sacs that are open into the follicles through ducts. And if the ducts become clogged, that's what comedones are, that clogged duct, which are the blackheads or the whiteheads. And these glands are larger on the face and the scalp rather than elsewhere. And that's why typically that's where we get the most of our acne. And that's also where we typically get more oily. We also have the sudoriferous glands or the sweat glands, and these are what's helping regulate our body temperature and eliminating waste products by excreting sweat. They have a coiled base and a duct opening or pores at the surface of the skin, which helps eliminate the fluids and the minerals daily. Losing an excess of fluids can lead to dehydration in the body. Reason we need to know this is because, especially during body treatments, a lot of people are going to be sweating out a lot. So once you guys use the table heater, you guys might notice that you sweat a lot more. So replenishing that water is going to be important to let our clients know that, or let you guys know that you need to do that. The sweat excretion is controlled by our nervous system, which are those motor nerves or the secretory nerves. And we have two types of sweat glands. We have apocrine glands and we have eccrine glands. Apocrine glands are coiled structures attached to our hair follicles, and those ones are found only under the arms and the genital area. So where the hair is a little bit thicker is where the apocrine glands are. And those secretions are released through our oil glands. The apocrine function is sensitive to adrenaline, and any odor that is associated with glands or sweat is more due to an interaction with the secretions and bacteria mostly on the skin. So sweat itself doesn't have an odor, but the bacteria that multiplies due to that humid, moist environment does has an odor. So that's kind of what you would be trying to target if you're a little stinky. Eccrine glands are found all over the body, but are primarily on the forehead, palms of the hands, and soles of the feet. So places that seem to get a little bit more sweaty when you're working out, for instance, or if you get nervous. And secretions of sweat are released directly on the skin surface through a duct or a pore. So they're not connected to any hair follicles. And typically they're more active when our bodies are subjected to more physical activity or higher temperatures. And again, typically sweat does not produce an offensive odor. It's more of the bacteria that is on the skin already that multiplies a little bit quicker when it's a moist, humid environment that causes the odor. So kind of remember that. So main takeaway is the apocrine glands are in areas of the arms, underarms, and the genital area, and those secretions are released through the oil glands, while the eccrine glands are found all over the body, and the secretions are released directly to the skin or the skin surface. So eccrine glands exit to the skin surface is kind of how I remember the difference. Question number 4 is, what are the 2 main glands associated with the skin? Moving on to the immune system. The immune system is a complex defense mechanism that protects our body from foreign substances, and it's activated when antigens are identified. Antibodies are molecules formed to fight and neutralize bacteria, viruses, and antigens. And these 3 cells are part of the immune system. We have Langerhans cells, which are dendritic in form, so they have a lot of branches, and their work is to absorb, process, and carry antigens from the nearest lymph node for further action. And they're predominantly in the stratum spineosum, so that second layer of the epidermis, but are also present in other layers of the skin. Leukocytes are just white blood cells. So the white blood cells have enzymes that digest and kill bacteria and parasites, and they also respond to allergies. So you would notice more of the leukocytes, and you know that they kill bacteria because they would be in pus. So the reason that the pus is that there was bacteria once there. There was white blood cells that went to fight that bacteria, and that's kind of what pus is. It's like a mixture of all of that. We also have T cells, which are a type of lymphocyte that attacks virus-infected cells, foreign cells, and cancer cells, and they're called T cells because they mature in the thymus gland. Moving on to skin nourishment, our blood and lymph is what is nourishing our skin. So there are networks of arteries and lymphatics that send essential materials for the growth and the repair through the body. So water, vitamins, minerals, and other nutrients are sent through all of this, and that's what's important for our skin health. Blood is supplying the nutrients and the oxygen to the skin, and the nutrients that our blood is supplying is going to come from our food molecules. So what we eat very much affects the way our skin looks in that aspect. Although topical products can also aid in nourishment, and our lymph is what is bathing, quote unquote, bathes our skin cells and removes toxins and cellular waste. And they also have immune functions for protection. Our skin cell health really depends on the cellular membrane and the water holding capacity of our stratum corneum, which is that outermost layer of the epidermis. There is intercellular lipids, so between the cells there's fats and lipids and also proteins that surround our cells to provide protection, hydration, and nourishment. Lipids are reduced if the skin's going to be more dry and damaged or mature. So that's why we have to use topical products that contain peptides, hyaluronic acid, ceramides, and other lipids that benefit the skin that's damaged from both intrinsic and extrinsic aging. Exfoliation is also removing and depleting our lipids. So topical product application is necessary for balance. And that's why also over-exfoliating can cause a lot more damage to the skin. Cell recovery also depends on water, so drinking water is essential to keep our skins healthy. And getting into a little bit more about ceramides. Ceramides are a group of waxy lipid molecules that are important to barrier function and water holding capacity. And 50% of our lipids in the stratum cornea are ceramides. Our body replaces billions of cells daily. So cells of organs are replaced every 6 to 9 months, and cells of our bones are replaced every 7 years, typically. And our collagen and elastin are typically easily replaced by our body. So our skin doesn't regain its once more pliable shape after being stretched or damaged by UV radiation or environmental pollution, which is why it's so important to take care of that. Research has shown that skincare treatments and ingredients like vitamin A, alpha hydroxy acids or AHAs, and alpha lipoic acid and other growth factors help stimulate the cell turnover and reduce visible signs of aging. So having that cell turnover is necessary to keep the skin healthy or just look its best. The sun and ultraviolet electromagnetic radiation have the greatest impact on how our skin ages. Ultraviolet radiation, or UVR, is a proven carcinogen, so that means it's proven that it causes cancer. It causes cancer because basically the exposure of the UV radiation alters the DNA, and that mutation is what cancer is, basically. It's just there is something wrong with the cell that was multiplied, and it's just not a healthy cell. About 80 to 85% of aging is caused by sun exposure. There is a weakening of collagen and elastin fibers, which naturally occurs as we age, but it's like amplified when our skin is frequently exposed to ultraviolet radiation. And that cell damage is accumulative. So like over the years, if you're not using sun protection, or if you're out in the sun a lot, over time, like you're going to age a lot quicker than the average person or someone that stays inside all day like me. We have UVA radiation. So the ultraviolet A rays are the aging rays, and they have a longer wavelength and they penetrate deeper into the skin and cause genetic damage and cell death. The UVA weakens the skin's collagen and elastin fibers, which causes the wrinkling and the sagging. That's why it's the aging rays. And they penetrate glass and clouds, and they're present all year round, and it's more prevalent than UVB rays. UVB radiation are also known as the burning rays because they cause burning, but they also cause tanning, aging, and cancer of the skin, and they can also damage our eyes. UVB rays are also shorter rays, and they don't penetrate as deeply as UVA rays, but they are stronger and more damaging to the skin and the eyes. And also UVB contributes to the body's synthesis of vitamin D and other minerals, so it's not like always bad. UVC radiation has more energy than the UVA and UVB rays, but it reacts with our ozone and it's completely absorbed, so we don't see any UVC radiation. What would happen if our ozone layer completely was gone is we'd probably all be dead because of the UVC radiation. So it's good that we have that ozone layer. High energy visible light, or HEV, are kind of a new consideration in skincare, and so you can potentially question your client's exposure during a consultation, but it's basically blue light from your TV, computer, and smartphone. It's said to penetrate the skin more deeply than UV rays and damage collagen, hyaluronic acid, and elastin. And there could be some evidence that light can worsen pigmentation problems. But for protection from ultraviolet radiation, or the UVR, melanin is naturally designed to help protect our skin from UV radiation, and it can be altered or destroyed by large, frequent doses. And in addition to advising your clients about necessary sun protections and precautions, you should also advise them to see a medical professional specializing in dermatology for regular skin checkups, especially if there's any changes in moles that you detect. Self-examinations at home can be also an effective way to check for signs of potential skin cancer between scheduled medical visits. Moving on to free radical damage. So free radicals are chemically active atoms or molecules that have unpaired electrons, which having that unpaired electron makes them unstable, and that can speed up the aging process. Molecules can lose electrons due to damage from UV rays, the environment, poor nutrition, unhealthy lifestyle, or injuries. And free radicals are reactive oxidants, so they're derived from reactions with other oxygen molecules, and they're searching the body for other electrons that allow them to become stable, neutral molecules again. So the free radicals basically are trying to take electrons from compounds in the body, which destabilize the healthy molecules that we have, and they create more free radicals, and they cause a chain reaction. To help combat the free radicals, we have antioxidants. So antioxidants are components that have an extra electron, and they're vital to neutralize that chain reaction. Proteins, enzymes, and vitamins are all antioxidants, and skin cells themselves have built-in antioxidants to protect against sun damage, but their ability to protect cells kind of deteriorates with sun exposure. So that's why using topical ingredients or topical antioxidants is very helpful, especially in paired with sun protection. Moving on to our environment. The changes in our environment can greatly influence our aging process. There are pollutants in the air from factories, automobile exhaust, and secondhand smoke that can influence the overall appearance and health of our skin. Climate, humidity levels, and other factors also can affect our skin a lot and even change skin type depending. So for example, if you're like me, in the summer, I'm very, very oily, and then in the winter months, I'm still oily, but I feel like I'm a little bit more dry, if that makes sense. So I don't know if you guys also experience the same thing, where in the colder months, you get a little bit drier, and then in the summer months, you might be a little bit more oily. You have more oil production because it's more humid and more hot out. So all of these things, the pollutants, the climate, the humidity, they don't only just affect the surface of the skin, but they also change the health and the underlying cells and tissues. So that's why home care and having a good routine, so cleansing, moisturizing, applying skincare treatments like our antioxidants, our growth factor serums, peptides, and sunscreen help protect our skin. Lifestyle choices also greatly affect our skin. So smoking, drinking, drugs, and poor diet greatly influences the skin's aging process. As an esthetician, it's our responsibility to be aware how these habits affect the skin. During consultation, we should also stress the benefits of good nutrition, exercise, a balanced lifestyle, and stress reduction. So smoking and tobacco not only can cause cancer, but are linked to premature aging and wrinkling of the skin. Nicotine itself causes a contraction of the weakening of the blood vessels and small capillaries that supply blood to the tissues, causing decreased circulation. That's why some people that smoke kind of have a more dull tone in their skin. So the tissues are deprived of oxygen, and the skin surface can have a yellowish or gray tone to it. Also, heavy or excessive alcohol intake dilates the capillaries and other blood vessels. And over time, the constant overdilation and weakening of the capillary walls can cause them to expand and burst, which would result in a flushed appearance. Excessive alcohol can also result in the glycation reaction. So when metabolized by the liver, it's toxic to cells. So hopefully you're not thinking, but you might have thought of this, that because smoking causes constriction of the blood vessels and drinking causes dilation of the blood vessels, that doing both of them would like cancel each other out, and it would be better to do both of them at the same time for optimal health, but you would be wrong. In fact, both of them together would be more damaging to the tissues because that constant dilation and contraction of the tiny capillaries and other blood vessels, along with the deprivation of the oxygen and water to the tissues, makes the skin look more lifeless and dull. So damage done is very difficult to reverse or diminish with that. Also, prescription and illegal drugs can affect the skin by interfering with the body's oxygen intake, aggravating skin conditions, dryness, and other allergic reactions. With legalization of marijuana, though, effects of cannabis should be considered with the skin's aging process as well. I would say typically smoking anything a lot worse than consuming, you know what I mean? So keep that in mind with your recreational drugs. Glycation is the destructive process where damaged structures and tissues gradually accumulate in the body, and this is caused by an elevation in blood sugar. So what's basically happening is there's a binding of a protein molecule to a glucose molecule or sugar molecule, and that results in the formation of damaged, non-functioning structures known as advanced glycation end products. And it alters the protein structures and decreases biological activity. Scientists have established that anything that causes a rise in our blood sugar results in inflammation on a cellular level, and that sugar can be attached to a collagen in the skin, making it stiff and inflexible. So this is why having a healthy lifestyle and a diet without excess sugar intake or in moderation can help keep our sugar levels balanced in our body and prevent that glycation. As we age, our skin changes a lot, mostly because the shifts in our hormone balance. So hormones are internal messengers for most of the body systems, and they're significant in the appearance of the skin, our strength, and our health overall. Women's skin continually is in a state of change due to hormonal changes in the reproductive and endocrine systems. Estrogen fluctuations affect the skin, and as skin ages, capillary and other vascular walls begin to weaken and lipids are reduced. The lymphatic system is less efficient and glands slow down. There's also fewer number of fibroblast cells, which affect cells, collagen, and elastin. This is also why then when women reach menopause, typically they may notice more wrinkles and sagging of the skin than thereafter. Testosterone levels can become dominant as estrogen decreases, which can also increase the sebum production, pore size, and hair growth on our face. So hormonal changes are also one of the causes of microcirculation problems common in mature skin, like cuperose skin. So cuperose skin or telangiectasia is the dilation of capillary walls. Other causes of vasodilation are hereditary, digestive problems, alcohol, smoking, sun damage, harsh cosmetics, trauma, pregnancy, excessive localized heat, topical corticosteroids, inflammation, and cold heat fluctuations. And all of these can potentially lead to permanent distension of the capillaries, which means just like the capillaries are closer to the skin, which is what's causing the redness. Rosacea is a chronic vascular disorder that's characterized by a varying degree of skin redness and congestion of the skin. Actinic rosacea includes the redness of the skin, but it also includes papules and pustules. Hormone replacement therapy, or HRT, is often suggested to balance estrogen for women experiencing menopause, although some HRT can be linked to breast cancer. Some therapies can be derived from animal source estrogens or plant source estrogens. There are phytoestrogens, which are estrogens from plants, and they're about 200 to 400 times weaker than the animal estrogens. If someone were to go on HRT, an HRT program, it has to be done with the help of a medical professional, so it's not within our scope of practice as an esthetician to make recommendations on that. Question number 5 is, how do antioxidants stop free radical damage, and what environmental influences affect skin health? So our learning objectives were to describe why learning the physiology and histology of the skin makes you a better esthetician, describe the attributes of healthy skin, distinguish the 6 primary functions of the skin, explain the function of each layer of the skin from deepest to the surface, identify a hair follicle as an appendage of the skin, also identify nails as an appendage of the skin, describe the functions of the 2 types of nerves, explain what is produced by the 2 types of glands in the skin, and distinguish the factors influencing skin health. And that is going to conclude our Chapter 3, Physiology and Histology of the Skin.